Speaker, I rise in strong support of this legislation. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized for such time.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful that the House is considering my bill today, the Syria Civilian Protection Act. I want to thank my friend, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Ed Royce, for joining as the lead Republican co-sponsor of this measure. I'm proud that we're bringing it up to the floor with 108 co-sponsors, members from both sides of the aisle. Mr. Speaker, every week more and more bad news pours in about the civil war in Syria. I'm grateful to Chairman Royce for making the comments he just made, because my heart has been bleeding for Syria, or crying out for Syria, for 4 or 5 years now. Ever since, as Mr. Royce said, there were peaceful demonstrations and they were mowed down by the Assad regime. The United States didn't do much. We sort of watched and retreated, and perhaps were afraid that we would be bogged down in another war. But we should have, at that point, in my estimation, helped the Free Syria Army, which begged us for help. Not people, not troops, but help. And we didn't do it. We didn't give it to them. We thought that Assad would fall on his own ultimately, but he didn't. And we are bearing the price today. We are paying the price today. The people of Syria, unfortunately, are the ones paying the price. And millions of people have died and have been misplaced, and just the horrors of war and the horrors of civilians. So my heart really bleeds for the Syrian people. This week, it was the revelation of a crematorium, a furnace where the criminals who do Assad's bidding can pile the bodies and try to burn away the evidence of their atrocities. Also this week, Russia announced that they'll work with Iran, Iraq, and Assad to open and secure a road from Baghdad to Damascus. And what that really means, Mr. Speaker, is a road from Beirut to Tehran in Iran, a permanent Iranian foothold right in the Middle East, a permanent Iranian foothold right on Israel's border, a permanent Iranian foothold to do mischief and the usual nefarious things that the Iranian government does. This crisis has been burning out of control for 6 long years. I was an early vocal supporter, as I mentioned before, of arming the moderate Syrian opposition. I thought we should have done much more to help push Assad out of power and help the Syrian people chart the course for their country's future. When we didn't, I spoke out, and since then, Assad has plowed ahead with his campaign of carnage. The few times he appeared to be taking on water, he was given a lifeline by his devoted enablers, Russia and Iran, through its terrorist proxy, Hezbollah. Every time Assad seemed to be losing, he was given a lifeline. And as I just mentioned, by Hezbollah, also given a lifeline by the Russians who came in. And so, while it was suspected in the highest annals of Washington that Assad wouldn't last more than a few months, no one would have imagined that 4 and 5 years later, there would be Assad winning the war, again with the help of Russia, Iran, and their terrorist proxies. It's a disgrace, Mr. Speaker, and we need to act out. We need to help. Today, we find ourselves no closer to a solution, and 4 months into the new administration, we're yet to hear a strategy for dealing with Syria. The Tomahawk missile strike last month was an appropriate response to the chemical weapons attack, although I believe the administration's policy shift with respect to Assad emboldened Assad to launch that attack, and a single missile strike is not a strategy. We need a plan to stop the violence, push a political transition that sees the end of Assad's rule, and helps the Syrian people recover and move forward. My bill, this bill, would be part of that strategy. It's named, as Mr. Royce pointed out, for Caesar, a former Syrian government photographer. Fed up documenting the brutality of the Assad regime, he defected and escaped so he could show the world exactly what was happening to the regime's victims. I'll never forget the images he showed us when he came to the Foreign Affairs Committee. Those images are still seared in my brain, and I'll never forget them. The depth of brutality and indifference to human life. We've named this bill after him because we want to send a message. If you're supporting this murder, If you're enabling the butcher in Damascus to continue waging that sort of violence against his own people, you're going to face consequences. This bill would sanction anyone who provides material support for the Assad regime. We want to go after the actual hardware that keeps his war machine running, the planes and bombs that terrorize the Syrian people, and the spare parts and oil that keep everything running. If you do business with Assad, the blood of the Syrian people is on your hands, and you're going to get caught up in these sanctions. And yes, that means Iran and Russia. If conditions on the ground changed and negotiations were in sight, it might be useful to dial back these sanctions in order to help end the violence. So we've built in some degree of flexibility. The measures are tough, but we don't want them to be a roadblock to peace. This bill also seeks to provide some relief to the Syrian people, who are now suffering terribly. It would improve oversight of assistance flowing into Syria and evaluate the feasibility of a no-fly zone. We also need to think about what must happen after the violence is ended, about who must be held accountable. So this bill requires reporting on human rights violators and would support efforts to gather evidence of crimes against humanity. This bill isn't a silver bullet. It isn't a strategy for resolving the crisis in Syria. Congress can do a lot, though, when it comes to foreign policy. We can give an administration tools and resources, but it's up to the White House to lead on this issue. If the first step in a Syria strategy is stopping the violence, and I think it is, this legislation can help dial up pressure on those driving the war. So I continue to push ahead, Mr. Royce at my side. I'm grateful to my colleagues for their support. I'm grateful to the Foreign Affairs Committee for moving this swiftly. I reserve the balance of my time.